Here we are, Passover. Again, Passover 2017. So all of us, we know what the Passover is about, right? We know what happened. We know what happened with the children of Israel. It was something that we talk about it every year, things like that. We've read the stories, right? And of course, because we're celebrating Passover, we still got to read the stories, right? We got to see what we get from it, see what kind of other examples we can find from it, what other things can be shown to us through the example of the Passover, right? So we're going to go to the book of Exodus, chapter 12, and we're going to start off reading verses 1 through 5. So it's again the book of Exodus, chapter 12, verses 1 through 5. And verse 1 says, "And the Most High spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, In the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for an house. And if the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of the souls. Every man according to his eating shall make your account for the lamb. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. Ye shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats." So, the very first thing you'll notice is that it was actually on the 10th day they were actually to pick a lamb out. So, it shows us that there was a degree of preparation involved with this, right? Preparing themselves, right? They had to have a lamb without blemish, right? Likewise, when we're building up to the Passover, there should be a preparation happening for us, right? Internally, but not because of us gathering a lamb, because of the lamb that was already without blemish that was shed for us. So, I want to flip real quick, though, and go to 1 Peter chapter 1. One of the things, we like to do is, when we're talking about the scriptures, and dealing with the Old Testament, like to show things in the New Testament as well, because there's a lot of doctrines out there that say that, well, hey, the New Testament, I don't believe in that because hey, that's Paul and all this stuff, and that's just the Christians or whatever, or it's deception, so we know we have extremism on both sides, right? Christians, no offense to any Christians, on the New Testament, some of our brothers and sisters, Hebrews that we call them, on the Old Testament. So we want to be balanced with the whole thing, though, right? So 1 Peter chapter 1, I'm going to read verses 18 and 19. And this just kind of goes along with that statement there that this was a lamb without blemish. Verse 18 states, "For as much as ye know that ye were not redeemed with corruptible things as silver and gold, from your vain conversation received by tradition from your fathers, but with the precious blood of the Messiah, as of a lamb without blemish and without spot." So we know that this sacrifice that was given for us was perfect, right? There was nothing wrong with it whatsoever. And it had to be perfect because that's the only way that it could truly atone for our sins and our wrongness and the things we've done, right? Mm-hmm. We needed a perfect sacrifice in order to take our places. So let's flip back to the book of Exodus, chapter 12. We're going to now read verses 6 through 20. So again, that's the book of Exodus, chapter 12, verses 6 through 20. Verse 6 states, "And ye shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month, and the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. And they shall take the blood and strike it on the two side posts, and on the upper door post of the houses wherein they shall eat it." Now, verse 6. Notice that they had already picked the lamb out on the 10th day. They kept it up until the 14th day, and the whole congregation was to kill it in the evening. Now, when you break it down in Hebrew, it actually is talking about between sundown and dark. So some scriptures render that translation as twilight, right? Just kind of want to see something there, because the thing is that the whole preparation and everything was done before sundown, the killing was done before sundown. And then verse 7 when you notice it says, take the blood, strike it on the two side posts, and on the upper door of the posts of your houses, where ye shall eat it. So let's think about this for a second, right? This was to serve as a moniker or a mark, right? Showing the presence of the blood, right? As a covering. Now it's interesting because, as we continue reading here, it's going to mention the destroying angel, right? And spiritually, we're supposed to have this same blood on our entrances and on our doorposts today. But what are our entrances today? Our hearts, our minds, right? So then if we don't have this blood covering on our minds, our hearts, on our own entrances, right? We ourselves become subject to the destroying angel. Now again, someone may think that's a stretch, but we read it just in the New Testament as well, though. Christ, the Lamb, was this actual lamb without blemish. All right? This lamb's blood was supposed to be on the entrances of their residence, where they reside at. That's just something that should speak to us allegorically when we talk about today. So verse 8, and they shall eat the flesh in the night, roasted with fire, and unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs they shall eat it. Eat not of it raw, nor sodden at all with water, but roast with fire, his head with his legs, and with the purtenance thereof. So this lamb had to be completely roasted, right? So he had to have his head and still have his legs and his insides on him, right? So it tells you he didn't just want part of the lamb for our atonement, right? He wanted the whole lamb, right? It's interesting because, we cook a lamb, and, Brother Anthony did roast a lamb last night, and it was a leg of lamb, right? But he asked for the whole lamb. And don't get me wrong, we're not being dogmatic saying, well, next year we want to make sure we take a whole lamb and roast it, right? Because we know there's an application to this spiritually now, right? But it's just a point to show that this lamb without blemish, the whole lamb was needed for the sacrifice, not just part of it. Just like our whole commitment to the Messiah is needed, not just part of it, the whole commitment. No matter what we have going on or what situations have happened in our lives, he still is asking for complete submission and commitment. So verse 10, and ye shall let nothing of it remain until the morning, and that which remaineth of it until the morning ye shall burn with fire. And thus shall ye eat it, with your loins girded, your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and ye shall eat it in haste. It is the Most High's Passover. Whose Passover is it? It's not ours, it's his Passover, right? Now let's think about that for a second. Okay, so since it's his Passover, right? His feast day, not our own. It's kind of like we were talking about before, right? We were talking about things that happen in churches, right? And how, we've been to churches and we've heard different pastors say things or whatever, and they say, well, in my church, this is the way it's going to be, right? And that's the thing. They're right. It's their church, which is why they can enforce whatever custom they want in their church, right? But we should be about the Most High's church, if you will, or the Most High's body, and not actually enforcing our own personal beliefs, right? Now, don't get me wrong. We all do have our own personal beliefs about something, right? And it's okay for us to share those things, with one another and things like that. But when it comes to pushing those things and saying this is how it is because I said it, something's wrong there. So we want to keep the focus on the fact that this is the Most High's holy day, right? But also think about something too. If it's the Most High's holy day and everything, right, there's urgency on our part too on how we behave and how we act and things like that, and how we prepare ourselves for its holy day too. Because it's not the same if we, just go to work, right? That's for us, right? The work is just, our jobs, and, while we need it to provide for families, our families and everything like that, it's still not the same type of, thing there, right? Because this is the Most High's, it means it belongs to him. It's a sanctioned time he's ordained to be set aside for a purpose for us to commemorate, to keep in remembrance. Verse 12, for I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am the Most High. And the blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses where ye are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt. That's the thing we want to kind of stick on for a second. He said to them, the blood is going to be for a token on your houses. And when he sees the blood, he'll pass over them. And the plague's not going to come to destroy them. That tells us something about, because we hear it said all the time, but we should be covered by the blood right now too. And you notice that to be covered by the blood, the atoning work is the work of the Messiah. But there was still something they had to do in order to become covered by the blood, right? They couldn't just say, well, hey, I believe, that, hey, you're going to come tonight and stuff like that, but I don't have to go and put no blood on my post. Hey, you said you're going to come. I believe it. But they had to actually do something. And this reminds us that even ourselves, we have to do something to be covered by this token of blood. Because it's interesting that he said that when he sees the token of blood, he will pass over them, and the plague shall not come upon them to destroy them. But the thing is, one of the problems that we have today in the churches is that the church, by and large, has failed us. We see people dying of cancer and different other host of diseases all the time, and those things are plagues. They actually are plagues. And we have to begin to question, well, why is the plague coming on me? What did I do, or what is it that I'm doing that has allowed the plague to come upon me, right? Some people, I've seen people that actually work out and they're in good shape still get some kind of sickness or disease, I've actually heard of cases where somebody was in shape, got a disease, and they were actually dead a few months later. It actually happened to a good friend of mine about a year and a half ago. And it was so shocking, I just wonder, how does this happen, right? And don't get me wrong, we're not here to speculate how he passed away or anything, but we know that he had a brain tumor, and that's a plague. So something was wrong. Something was not quite where it should be, because the plague came and got him. And, it's one of those things that it was very scary for me, because, this was someone I knew dearly. And I said, well, Father, your word says this and that, What I've come to realize, and, being Brother D, had these conversations sometimes, is that sometimes our interpretation is just wrong, The Bible should be working for us, right? But there's something we have to do on our end also to make it work for us. Just like they had to actually take the blood of the lamb without blemish and put it on the doorpost, there's something still each and every one of us have to do to make sure we're covered by this blood. Verse 14, and this day shall be unto you for a memorial, and you shall keep it as a feast to the Most High throughout your generations. You shall keep it a feast by an ordinance forever. 7 days shall ye eat unleavened bread. Even the first day ye shall put away leaven out of your houses. For whosoever eateth leavened bread from the first day until the 7th day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. We're going to spend a little time talking about leaven today, because leaven goes hand in hand with the Passover. All right? And I know that it's one of those things that a lot of times, we don't really like to talk about, sin and things like that, right? But the thing is, it's one of those things where that's still the one thing, though, that can keep us out of the kingdom. And it's one of those things that even though we don't necessarily like to talk about it, it's such a big thing that it's actually talked about throughout the Bible, Old and New Testament, over and over and over and over again. It's such a big thing that the Most High remarked about our ancestors. They're stiff-necked people, and they won't listen. They're hard-hearted. So there's something really big about sin that even today, in this day and hour, we still just can't get past it. We all still have our own individual struggles somewhere when it comes to sin, or shall we say leaven. So when you talk about the Passover, we have to deal with the leaven, because Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread go hand in hand. You just can't separate them. Feast of Unleavened Bread the day after. Verse 15. 7 days shall ye eat unleavened bread, even the first day ye shall put away leaven out of your houses. For whomever eateth leavened bread from the first day until the 7th day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. And in the first day there shall be a holy convocation, and in the 7th there shall be a holy convocation to you. No matter of work shall be done in it, save that which every man must eat, that only may be done of you. And ye shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, for in this self same day have I brought your armies out of the land of Egypt. Therefore shall ye observe this day in your generations by an ordinance forever. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month at even, ye shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month at even. 7 days shall there be no leaven found in your houses, for whosoever eateth that which is leavened, even that soul shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether he be a stranger or born in the land. Ye shall eat nothing leavened, in all your habitations shall ye eat unleavened bread. Did you notice that he mentioned not eating this leaven 3 times? 3 times. Now think about this. In a conversation with Moses, why does he have to say it 3 times? Right. Stiff neck, right? And it's the same thing today when it comes to leaven, right? Now I know, some of my brothers, and sisters, right, will be saying, well, have you got the leaven out of your house yet, right? But we're going to see if the application still applies with physical leaven, or is it talking about spiritual leaven? And of course, we know the answer to these things, right? But like I said, some kind of way, the Most High keeps dealing with this about leaven every day, not just during the Passover. Because it's talked about sin throughout the Bible, continuously. So, we know at that time that the Most High was talking about leaven and actual dough or in bread, right? So, let's take a look at offerings also, because there's a mention about leaven as far as offerings go as well. So we're going to go to the book of Leviticus, and we're going to spend a little time in the Old Testament today. Leviticus chapter 2, going to read verses 1 through 11. That's Leviticus 2, 1 through 11. Verse 1, and when any will offer a meat offering unto the Most High, his offering shall be of fine flour. He shall pour oil upon it, and put frankincense thereof. He shall bring it to the Aaron's sons, the priests, and they shall take thereof his hand of the flour thereof, and of the oil thereof, with all the frankincense thereof, and the priest shall burn the memorial of it upon the altar, to be an offering made by fire of a sweet savor unto the Most High. And the remnant of the meat offering shall be Aaron's and his sons. It is a thing most holy of the offerings of the Most High made by fire. And if thou bring an oblation of a meat offering baken in the oven, it shall be unleavened cakes of fine flour mingled with oil, or unleavened wafers anointed with oil. And if thy oblation be a meat offering baken in a pan, it shall be of a fine flour, unleavened, mingled with oil. Thou shalt part it in pieces and pour all thereof. It is a meat offering. And if thy oblation be a meat offering baken in the frying pan, it shall be made of fine flour with oil. And thou shalt bring the meat offering that is made of these things unto the Most High, and when it is presented unto the priest, he shall bring it unto the altar. And the priest shall take from the meat offering a memorial thereof, and he shall burn it upon the altar. It is an offering made by fire, of a sweet savor unto the Most High. And that which is left of the meat offering shall be Aaron's and his sons. It is a thing most holy of the offerings of the Most High made by fire. No meat offering which ye shall bring unto the Most High shall be made with leaven. For ye shall burn no leaven, nor any honey, in any offering of the Most High made by fire. So, we see that meat offerings could not be actually offered with leaven either. It's kind of interesting to me, because when I saw that actually in the scriptures, I was like, a meat offering offered without leaven. Okay, Well, let's go to chapter 6. We're going to read verses 14 through 17 there. Verse 14, and this is the law of the meat offering. The sons of Aaron shall offer it before the Most High before the altar, and he shall take of it his handful of the flour of the meat offering, and of the oil thereof, and all the frankincense which is upon the meat offering, and burn it upon the altar for a sweet savor, even the memorial of it unto the Most High. And the remainder of thereof shall Aaron and his sons eat. With unleavened bread shall it be eaten in the holy place. In the court of the tabernacle of the congregation they shall eat it. It shall not be baken with leaven. I have given it unto them for their portion of my offerings made by fire. It is most holy, as is the sin offering and as the trespass offering. So, we read in Leviticus 2, and we skipped to Leviticus chapter 6, and he mentions this meat offering again with no leaven. So again, the point here is that there's a reason why the Most High keeps mentioning no leaven. Because if it was just simple to the point, I mean, he just would have said it one time and just been done with it, right? But we continuously have problem with leaven. So obviously there's some kind of emphasis being put onto it. So let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 16. That's Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 3. Thou shalt eat no leavened bread with it. 7 days shalt thou eat unleavened bread therewith, even the bread of affliction, for thou camest forth out of the land of Egypt in haste, that thou mayest remember the day when thou camest forth out of the land of Egypt all the days of thy life. Talking about again in Deuteronomy 16, the Passover. So again, Most High is mentioning something about this thing called leaven. So let's take a little further look into leaven. We're going to go now to the New Testament here in Matthew chapter 16. And again, I'm sure that none of this is anything anyone doesn't not know. But on Passover, we always have to have this reminder, right? We have to have this reminder because the Most High wants us to rehearse the Passover over and over. It's just like we know that the Messiah died for our sins, right? For some reason, he wants us to keep rehearsing that, though. He wants us to remember it. Just like when he said, remember the Sabbath, right? And keep it holy, right? He wants us to keep remembering it and rehearsing it, right? And why? Because there's something to it, because if we actually remember it and it's in our heart, then it will make us more steadfast in our walk with him in the process in everyday life. So, Matthew chapter 16, we're going to read verses 1 through 12. Verse 1 says, The Pharisees also with the Sadducees came, and tempting desired him that he would show them a sign from heaven. He answered and said unto them, When is it evening, ye say, It will be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning it will be foul weather today, for the sky is red and lowering. O ye hypocrites, ye can discern the face of the sky, but ye cannot discern the signs of the times? A wicked and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign, and there shall be no sign given unto it, but the sign of the prophet Jonas. And he left them and departed. And when his disciples were come to the other side, they had forgotten to take bread. And the Messiah said unto them, Take heed and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of the Sadducees. It's interesting here because the disciples, they just forgot to bring bread. And the Messiah took that as a teaching opportunity to talk to them about leaven. See, say that because you know how sometimes, we can see things in the scripture and we can see allegorically it applies somewhere else as well, or a principle is there. And Messiah was full of principles, right? They forgot bread. Messiah was thinking about leaven. You know what I mean? And it's interesting that that's what he went to. He didn't even care about the physical bread. He talked about leaven. And they reasoned, verse 7, among themselves, saying, It's because we have taken no bread. So think about this for a second, right? They forgot bread, and he said, Be careful of the leaven of the Pharisees. They still think he's talking about bread. They say, You know what? What's he talking about? Oh, you know what? Peter, we forgot the bread. Messiah looking at him like, Huh? You still think I'm talking about bread? Why are we saying this, right? Because remember, in the old covenant, he was talking about actual leaven and bread, right? But then we come to the new covenant, because there is a new covenant. So while the old covenant is there, the law and the prophets are there, sometimes the application is not the same. It was like I had me and Justin. I think me and the Dark had the same conversation too. You know, in our former church, they used to always tell us that when the time of Passover came, that we needed to make sure that we removed anything in our houses out that had leaven in it, right? And I recall, I told Dark and Justin, I said, I'm not moving it out of mine. And I said, because I already know that he's not talking about bread anymore. I know he's talking about something else. You know what I mean? And I remember we were just steadfast with that. You know what I mean? Now, I'm not going to say we never did remove it, because I know there was a time we did physically remove it, because we were just like, well, just in case, right? But it was one of those things that looking at it deeper, we just like realized he's not talking about bread anymore. And we weren't like the disciples anymore saying, you know what? It's because we forgot bread. That's it, So verse 8, which when the Messiah perceived, he said unto them, O ye of little faith, why reason you among yourselves, because you have brought no bread? So this right there should tell us something, right? The Messiah could have took that opportunity to say, yeah, you know what, you shouldn't have any actual bread in your house. And you may say, why are we talking about this? We know about this. You know why? Because you never know who may be listening to this and still taking out physical bread in their house. Remember what we do. We ask the Most High to let the words he would like to be spoken. We have no idea who may hear this talk or whatever. We have no idea. And so we just go with the flow of what the Most High allows us to come, right? So when they said that they forgot about bread, he said, why, you of so little faith, why are you thinking, and I'm paraphrasing, that I'm talking about bread? Verse 9, do ye not understand, neither remember the 5 loaves of the 5,000 and how many baskets ye took up? So the Messiah takes the opportunity to say, look, do you not understand that I'm the king of bread making? If I want some bread, I can take 2 loaves, 5 loaves, and feed 5,000 with it. So I'm not talking about bread here. The Messiah made that clear, right? Remember, he's talking to the disciples. He's letting them know, no. Why are you thinking about bread? You're totally missing the point. You're not perceiving what I'm talking about. Verse 10. He said, neither the 7 loaves of the 4,000 and how many baskets ye took up. So he's telling them, don't you remember how I did this? I'm not talking about bread here. Verse 11. How is it that ye do not understand that I speak it not to you concerning bread, that ye should be aware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of the Sadducees? How is it that today we have all these scriptures together, and we still think he's talking about moving leaven, some physical leaven out of the house? Again, not going against trying to go against anyone's belief system. We're just coming from the scriptures. Messiah said he wasn't talking about bread. But you notice how he used the word leaven? Where did he get it from? Old Testament, Old Covenant. Because, like it says in Matthew 5:17, I came not to destroy the law, but to fulfill it. Not one jot or tittle shall pass away until all be fulfilled. The problem is, some of our brothers and sisters on the right, I don't know, I guess you could say the left, whatever, right? The left or the middle, right? Some of our brothers and sisters in the Christian church think he's saying, oh, okay, yeah, it's all done away with. Okay, cool, I got grace, I'm good. You know what I mean? Right? Then you got some of my brothers, you know what I mean? And some of them, I know we shouldn't even call brothers, both on either side, but for the sake of conversation, we got some of our brothers and sisters on the other side saying, well, I don't believe in Messiah, but I'm going to take all this bread out of my house. So it's an extreme on both sides, right? We've come to a point that we have extremism, like I said, on both sides, and nobody wants to be balanced and apply it just the way the scriptures actually apply it, right? What the Messiah said, how is it that you did not understand that I speak to you not concerning bread? He even reminded them about the previous times when they had a little bit of loaves of bread and he fed all these people with bread. with it. And he's telling them, how is it that you don't understand that I'm talking about not being aware of the Pharisees and the Sadducees, their teachings? Because that's what this comes down to. Verse 12, then understood they how that he bade them not beware of the leaven of bread, but of the doctrine of the Pharisees and of the Sadducees. So, Messiah used leaven to illustrate that sometimes, a bad doctrine, a doctrine that's not of him, it's also leaven. Because if it's not of him, then what is it? It's sin, right? Paul said, you shouldn't be preaching any other Messiah, right? So if it's any other Messiah being preached than the one in the Bible, that's of sin. So we see here that in one application of leaven, the Messiah used it to apply to wrong teachings, wrong doctrines. Okay? But let's see something else as well. Let's go to the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 5. And we're going to read verses 1 through 8. Now, we have to preface here, Paul was dealing with a certain situation that was happening in the church in Corinth at this time. So we're going to be reading a little bit about that episode that happened. All right? But we're going to see something also that he's still going to apply to leaven here. So verse 1, he says, it is reported commonly that there is fornication among you, and such fornication that is not so much as named among the Gentiles, that one should have his father's wife. So we're dealing with a situation where a son is actually having relations with his father's wife. Verse 2, and ye are puffed up, and have not rather mourned that he that hath done this deed might be taken away from you. For I verily, as absent in body, but present in spirit, have judged already, as though I were present concerning him that hath so done this deed. And in the name of our Lord the Messiah, when ye are gathered together in my spirit with the power of the Lord Messiah, to deliver such as one unto Satan for the destruction of the flesh, that the spirit may be saved in the day of the Messiah. Now, it's interesting that he said you should deliver one unto Satan there for the destruction of the flesh, that his spirit may be saved. When I first read that actually kind of struck me off guard, right? He actually said that they should deliver that one unto Satan to destroy the flesh so that the spirit might be saved. We would never talk like that today, would we? We would never, if we saw somebody, in some kind of sin or something like that, we would never say to somebody else, oh, well, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to leave you to rot to Satan and everything that your spirit may be saved. And if we did say it, somebody else would look at us like, what? You said that? Brother, sister, that's not being long-suffering. But here, Paul said, deliver such a one as unto Satan for the destruction of the flesh, that his spirit might be saved. So why are we talking about this, right? Because, we talk about leaven, and we're going to get to the spiritual application. There's always something done out of the flesh. And those fleshly desires we have, these fleshly ways we have, they have to be destroyed in order so that we can actually be covered and made righteous, right? So we have to shed these fleshly things off of us. But we're going to keep going. Verse 6. Your glorying is not good. Know ye not that a little leaven leaveneth the whole lump? So wait a minute. Now he takes the opportunity to Paul now to bring up leaven again. And we know here that leaven is not talking about teachings here. It's talking about sin. Specifically, the fornication that was happening there in the church in Corinth, right? So why are we looking at this? Because again, we have to prove things from the scriptures, right? Because y'all know that somebody from Hebrew roots will be listening to this now. We won't have any problems with any Christians with hearing this. They'll be like, oh yeah, I know. Yeah, the leaven, yeah, I know that's talking about sin. But yet they'll go to the club that night and still sin, right? They'll know it's talking about sin, but still go do something that they know is adversely leaven. So we got to make sure we define these things, because we do have some of our people in the Hebrew roots movement and things like that will hear this and still be thinking that it's talking about bread as well. So you see how, like, we got to bridge the gap, right? On both sides, huh? Because both sides have a misunderstanding, right? So that's why we're kind of going a little bit more into depth on that. So now Paul likens fornication, a sin, to leaven. But he then says a little leaven leaveneth the whole lump. So we got to stop there for a second. Because, again, we talked about how sin is that one thing that'll keep us out of the kingdom. But y'all know how we say things in the world like a white lie, for example. Y'all, we've all heard that saying, right? Somebody said, oh, it's just a white lie, right? So, yeah, it's just a little white lie, won't hurt, you know what I mean? But that's a little leaven, though. And Paul said a little leaven leaveneth the whole lump. So we come across those things that seem innocent. There's some things that seem innocent sometimes that we, even individually, us all in this room, that we do sometimes that seem innocent, right? But you know, when the Most High is getting in your mix, the Most High doesn't let those things slide, does he? He comes and he convicts you about it, and he says, nope, that's a little leaven there. And a little leaven, if I let you get away with a little leaven, then your whole lump will be leaven at that point. And if your whole leaven is lumped up with leaven, if your whole lump becomes a leaven, tongue twister here, then how can you say that you're actually covered with the blood of Messiah? If the whole lump is covered with leaven, well, guess what happens now when the destroying angel comes through? Sees no blood, because where the blood would have covered is all covered with leaven now. Again, I know we don't really like to talk about the sin factor, but it's the one thing that just will keep us out of the kingdom. And again, you know, it seems like the Most High wants to deal with us even with those little bitty things, right? Those little bitty things that we actually look over. You know, that we just say, oh, yeah, ain't a big deal, you know, stuff. But it's a big deal to him, because he said it just starts out just being a little bit. So you think about this congregation, right? This was one man that was the focus of this whole chapter that Paul is talking to this church about, to the church of Corinth about. This one man, right? And Paul said that one man, that was a little leaven in that church. And that little leaven could spread to the whole church. Do we remember how the Most High would have punishments or judgments for different laws that were broken? For example, what about the brother that went out there gathering sticks on the Sabbath? Y'all remember what happened to him? What if he could have been righteous in every other act in his life? But that one day, he went out and was gathering sticks on the Sabbath, and Moses and the elders came to Moses and said, what shall we do with him? And Moses took it to the Most High. Most High delivered a swift verdict. He said, you were going to stone him with stones, that he's going to die. The Most High wasn't playing with what he said, this is what you do. He's not playing with us today on how he says we should be living, right? But sometimes, you know, we're not exactly as serious as we should be in our walk as we should be. He stoned him with stones that he would die, right? But that's the only recorded sin that we know that he did. Now, yeah, we can assume and say, well, you know what? That probably happened because he wasn't a good person. But the Bible doesn't tell us any of that, does it? It just tells us that he went gathering sticks on the Sabbath. The elders came to Moses and said, what should we do? Moses took it to the Most High. The Most High said, stone him with stones that he died. So that was a little leaven. And then we notice every time in the law that the Most High would always tell them that if this is committed, this judgment is going to happen because you're going to put the evil away from you. See, the problem with churches today is we're not putting the evil away from among us. And if we do, we get labeled like Jehovah's Witnesses, right? Sometimes, you know, that's that one thing that nobody likes that the Jehovah's Witnesses do, which is disfellowship, right? But disfellowship is actually scriptural. Of course, after you take the proper protocol, right? Go to the person, you yourself. They still won't hear you. Take your brother, you know, 2 or more, go to them. They still won't hear you. Now you take it to the congregation. How many times have we even heard of that even happening? where the whole congregation talks to them. Because we say we're Israelites, but in form and function, sometimes we don't really act like Israelites, right? We're still supposed to be thinking like an Israelite nation and putting the evil away from among us. We're still supposed to be putting the leaven away, right? But in function, if we did these things today, we'll be saying, "Oh man, you know what? I can't believe that. No, I'm not gonna fool with them no more." But that's one thing, right, Sally? That's one thing we can say to Jehovah's Witnesses right about. If nothing else, that one thing, right? They will talk to somebody who they know. If they know they're in sin or whatever, they will talk to them, try to reestablish them like the scriptures say. And if they don't listen, they will take it out. I'm talking from experience, knowing the Jehovah's Witnesses, as I was part of that organization for a little while. You know what I mean? Now, that didn't per se happen to me in that organization, but I know that actually happens. You know what I mean? They do it discreetly, but it's scriptural. Verse 7, purge out therefore the old leaven, that ye may be a new lump, as ye are unleavened. For even Christ, our Passover, is sacrificed for us. So, we talk about leaven. You know, we've seen the Messiah apply that to teaching. We've seen him also apply that to sin, right? We see in the Old Testament that the Most High had during the time of Passover and on the Feast of Unleavened Bread for them to take all the leaven out of their house. As a schoolmaster, like it says in Galatians chapter 3, the schoolmaster to bring us to Christ. So that by the time Christ came and Christ told us, you know, you need to put the leaven of bad teaching out of your house, or you need to put the leaven of sin out of your life. We would have already been familiar with leaven from the law, right? And we'd be like, oh, wow. So Christ, the Messiah, is saying that the leaven that was talked about in the law was a physical representation of the Spirit, what we should be doing in the Spirit then. Oh, wow. Okay. He's not talking about bread anymore. The schoolmaster. Wow. And then that should make us think, wow, the schoolmaster was actually brilliant, right? It's kind of brilliant how the law laid that out. And then the Messiah came and then brought that to, what's the word when he said fulfill? It's complete understanding, right? Fruition, right. But he brought a complete understanding to that about leaven. But also, Paul used this to even talk about how one bad seed in the congregation can cause the whole thing to be leavened. So then what will happen to us if we look at ourselves, because we say we're Israelites, right? You know what I mean? We say we're Israelites. So what would happen then if we see leaven in the congregation, but we don't deal with it, right? I know that this is kind of like one of those touchy subjects, right? Because we don't, like I said, it's just one of those things we kind of like to stay away from it, you know what I mean? But it's the truth, because we're still supposed to operate like a nation, right? The Israel of God, right? We're still supposed to be putting the evil away from among us. But that starts with us individually first. What evil do we have within ourselves today that we should be putting away? Because I would venture to say, if we all look hard enough, we could see something that we need to be better at, right? Something. So we know we have to start with ourselves. Purge out therefore the old leaven in ourselves, that ye may be a new lump, as ye are unleavened. So he said there, Paul said, ye are unleavened. If you're unleavened, then that means we're living a life we're purposefully living a life without sin. Doesn't mean that we don't sin occasionally and make a mistake. But our actual focus is living a life without sin. But you know, sometimes we get caught up with life, and that's not really our focus anymore. We just focus on the everyday thing, going to work and doing what we have to do to take care of our families. And it's easy to kind of fall into that in this world because all the distractions out there, right? We have so many distractions just that are vying for our attention that it's kind of hard to stay focused on those things. But still, you know, we have to start with ourselves first, right? Verse 8, therefore, let us keep the feast, not with old leaven, neither with the leaven of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. So, Paul brought it back around as well, explaining now that this leaven that it's talking about during this time of Passover is talking about self-reflection, self-examination, looking at ourselves and examining what areas in our life do we still have leaven at. And that's the thing where we have to kind of actually look at. So clearly that we can see again that the law, the schoolmaster, was foreshadowing in the spirit about removing leaven from our lives, talking about sin. Let's go for another verse here in 1 Corinthians chapter 10. We're going to read verse 17. Because it's so funny because, Paul talked about this a little bit. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 17. For we being many are one bread. Whoa, he said we're one bread. Right? Also, one body, right? He said, and one body. For we are all partakers of that bread. So, if we're one body, it makes sense then that if there's some kind of leaven going on with us, we got to do something about it, right? Because we can't be bringing the leaven in ourselves and attaching it to the body of Christ, right? He said that when that happens, no, it's time to put the evil from among you, right? And that's starting with us individually first. So, again, it's amazing because we have to start examining ourselves and making sure that we come across Passover, and this is year by year, not just for Passover, but it's a focus that's put on Passover because Passover is about our sins being atoned for, right? And so the thing is that since it's talking about our sins being atoned for, it's saying that we need to be in a state of right standing in order to receive our remission for our sins and receive forgiveness for those things so that we can be covered when the destroying angel comes through. Remember, we read out in the Old Testament that when he sees the blood, he will pass over them and the destroying angel wouldn't come. See, I venture to say, that a lot of times today, we've had visits from the destroying angel. And it's just by the Most High's grace and mercy that we're still walking and still standing. But we're going to see something even about that too in the New Testament that Paul's going to mention. All right? Right now we're supposed to be houses. Living houses, possessions that the Most High can dwell in, right? Do we think the Most High wants to dwell in these houses with leaven in them? No. So let's go to 1 Corinthians chapter 3. I know, like I said, we'll be in 1 Corinthians here just a little bit. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 16 and 17. It says, know ye not that ye are the temple of the Most High, and that the Spirit of the Most High dwelleth in you? If a man defile the temple of the Most High, him shall the Most High destroy. For the temple of the Most High is holy, which temple ye are. So, not only do we see, talking about removing leaven out of your house, but now we're even the house. So another thing showing us that he's not talking about a physical house today to be moving leaven out of. He's talking about this house that each one of us possesses. That's a member of that one bread, a member of that one body. Because a little leaven leavens the whole lump. Well, if we got leaven in there, we're also defiling the temple of the Most High. Now, am I stretching by saying that? No. Because the thing is that he says a little leaven the whole lump. And then he says, we are the temple of the Most High. The Most High's temple couldn't have leaven in it. I mean, that's just not the way it could go. When the high priest came once a year for the Day of Atonement, if he had some kind of sins going on, there's a reason why he had bells at his feet. There's a reason why they listened for that bell, because if that high priest wasn't right, they knew they were going to drag him out of there. And that even gives you another allegory, because the Messiah, being the high priest now, had to go in there perfect, right? When those high priests in the Old Testament went in there, imperfect, but if they had some sin going on with them, they had to be in a perfect standing. See, that's the thing, you know what I mean? Not saying they were perfect, but they had to be in a perfect standing. It's still just like Christ was the actual perfect sacrifice and the perfect high priest. So the point is that if a little leaven leavens the whole lump, we are that one bread, members of that one body, and then now he calls us the temple. He says that he who defiles the temple, the Most High will destroy. That goes back to the Old Testament as well, because remember, the destroying angel we read about, he's got to see the blood. He's got to see that. He's got to see us in right standing. Because us being covered by the blood, being in right standing, is the only thing that the destroying angel will look at and respect. So, let's go back to 1 Corinthians 6. We're going to read verses 19 and 20. It's 1 Corinthians 6. And this is just more confirmation. Chapter 6, verses 19 and 20. What? Paul says, know ye not that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit which is in you, which you have of God, and ye are not your own? For ye are bought with a price. Therefore glorify the Most High in your body and in your spirit, which are the Most High's. So, not only are we the temple of the Most High, he goes further to say that our bodies and our spirits even belong to him. That we don't even belong to ourselves anymore. So, even more emphasis there why we should be definitely making sure we're self-examining and making sure we're right, in a right standing, that is, to actually be able to properly receive the Passover lamb during this time during the feast. So we can't defile this house. We can't bring leaven into this temple, right? So we got to make sure we're removing the leaven out of our out of our houses today, our spiritual houses, our in our lives, in order to truly commemorate the feast of the Passover as well as unleavened bread, which is what we're doing right now. And again, this is not talking about grains. This is talking about anything that will be taking us away from the Messiah. So let's go to the book of Hebrews chapter 3. It's the book of Hebrews chapter 3. And in Hebrews chapter 3, we're going to read verses 1 through 6. Verse 1 says, Wherefore, holy brethren, partakers of the heavenly calling, consider the apostle and high priest of our profession, the Messiah himself, who was faithful to him that appointed him, as also Moses was faithful in all his house. For this man was counted worthy of more glory than Moses, inasmuch as he who hath built the house has more honor than the house. For every house is built by some man, but he that built all things is the Most High. And Moses verily was faithful in all his house as a servant, for a testimony of those things which were to be spoken after. But Christ, the Messiah, as a son over his own house, whose house we are, if we hold fast the confidence and the rejoicing of the hope firm unto the end. So this house that it says that Messiah should have built, we should be that house that he's building, right? And he's also faithful over that house. And it says we are that house if we hold fast the confidence and the rejoicing of the hope. But here's the thing, if we're living lives filled with leaven, though, then we're not really showing that we're actually holding fast our confidence and rejoicing in the hope that the Messiah gives to us. We're not showing that if we're not actually living according to the way that he actually wants us to live. So, when we talk about leaven, like I said, we've seen how it's not talking about grains. He dealt with the disciples about that. We see these talk about anything that could take us away from him, that could cause us to sin. Bad teaching could do that. Sin could do that, right? Paul even gave us an example about the man that was actually having relations with his father's wife. But in order to get to this point here, there's some kind of conversion that has to take place, in the heart, though. So let's go back to the Old Testament. the book of Exodus, chapter 12. Told y'all we were going to be in the Old Testament quite a bit today. That's Exodus chapter 12. We're going to read verses 47 and 48. Well, let's read 48. It says, "And when a stranger shall sojourn with thee, and keep the Passover to the Most High, let all his males be circumcised, and let him come near and keep it. And he shall be as one that is born in the land, for no uncircumcised person shall eat thereof." Oh, wait a minute. He just said that no uncircumcised person could eat of the Passover. Did everybody see that? So today, we know that Moses said in the law that circumcise the foreskin of your heart as well, right? We know there's physical circumcision, right? But physical circumcision, the Bible says that Abraham received the promises before he had physical circumcision. Physical circumcision was simply only a token or a sign of this heart conversion already. But look at this in the law. A person that was uncircumcised couldn't even take part in the Passover. And for all of my Hebrew brothers and sisters out there, that meant even us. Period. There was no question. If you were uncircumcised, you could not take part in it. Now, it's interesting that that's there, because that's one of those things that's very rarely, I've actually never heard it talked about when talking in a Passover lesson. I've never heard them actually say that, if someone's not circumcised, they should not be taking part in this in the Passover meal. Of course, we know that the circumcision is spiritual now, right? We know it's a circumcision of the heart. We know it was spoken of in the law. But it's not even mentioned, because sometimes when we're rehearsing these feast days, we just do it just like it's a thing, like any other thing of the year. Like it becomes almost a thing, almost like when we go to work every day. Oh yeah, it's Passover. Okay, yeah, that's cool. All right, cool. That's just like, oh yeah, I got to go to work tomorrow. So we're not necessarily saying, okay, cool. We're probably like, nah, man, I don't want to go to work tomorrow. But, y'all know what I mean, right? It's an everyday thing. We know we got to do it, and it is what it is, right? But no uncircumcised person could eat it. And circumcision was a covenant between us and the Most High, right? Let's go back to Abraham, though. So let's go back to the book of Genesis, chapter 17. And we're going to read verses 9 through 14. Genesis chapter 17, 9 through 14. Verse 9. "And the Most High said unto Abraham, Thou shalt keep my covenant, therefore, thou and thy seed after thee and thy generations. This is my covenant which ye shall keep between me and you and thy seed after thee. Every man child among you shall be circumcised. And ye shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a token," or a sign, "of the covenant betwixt me and you." See, there should be some kind of token or sign going on today between us and the Most High. It's just that it can't necessarily be seen. It's not seen in the flesh, but we can see it still. Because didn't he say, "You shall know them by their works"? You shall know them by their fruit. So we can still see today if someone's circumcised or not, right? And y'all know, hey, that, without naming a certain place, a place that we were at, we know a lot of people were not circumcised before taking part in Passover, don't we? Right? We're not even trying to be, and that's not a judgment or whatever saying against. Again, he said we will know them by their fruit. That's not us saying that. He said it, right? So he said there will be some kind of indication if someone's actually, part of the covenant, right? I mean, didn't he say that we have to allow the thorns to grow among you? There have to be there has to be tares among the wheat. So we know there's going to be people that are among us, right, that claim to actually be in Messiah and following the Messiah and following his word and things that are actually really not nothing of the Messiah, right? Verse 12. And he that is 8 days old shall be circumcised among you, every man child in your generations. He that is born in the house or bought with money of any stranger, which is not of thy seed. That's right, even the stranger had to have the same circumcision. He that is born in thy house, and he that is brought with money, must needs be circumcised. And my covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And the uncircumcised man child, whose flesh of his foreskin is not circumcised, that soul shall be cut from among his people. He has broken my covenant. Whoa, wait a minute. How many people today have actually broken the covenant by taking part in Passover? I'm not talking about like in this room. I'm saying in general. Do you know how many people this year are going to be keeping Passover? And they're going to actually be thinking that they should have accolades because they're keeping a feast day, and they're going and doing it with an uncircumcised heart? They are going to break his covenant. And some of them are repeat offenders. They do it every year because their heart is not converted. He said an uncircumcised person can't even take part in the feast. Whoa, but we did define that the Bible did say in Exodus 12 that this was the Most High's Passover, right? So wait a minute, okay. So since it's his Passover, he gets to decide who can come, right? Right. We don't even get to decide who can come, right? We don't even get to decide if we can take part in it. Because he's looking at our hearts and examining and saying, Actually, he's not saying because he already knows us, right? But he's making the decision on who can really take part in it. Because it's his feast day, and he can do that. But the person that takes part in it that's uncircumcised has broken the covenant. Wow. So before we can even think about unleavened bread, Passover, there's a circumcision that needs to be taking place. Because again, we're reading all these things in the law because the law is our schoolmaster to bring us to Christ, right? So that we now may look at the law of Christ, which supersedes the law of Moses. Let me say that again, because I know a brother or sister hearing this will say, oh, wait a minute, he throwing out the law. You know what? No, I can't even listen to that no more. No, we're not throwing away the law. Because we know the law is encompassed in the law of Christ, right? I heard Sis Linnell say it earlier today, her and Tara talking about it. The whole law and the prophets are summed up in these two things. Love the Most High with your whole heart, your whole soul, with all your might, and love your neighbor as you love yourself. For these things encompass the whole law. See, if we know those things, then guess what? I don't need to know the 70 laws about stealing, right? If I don't steal, I don't need to know what I need to do for restitution, do I? Because I'm not going to ever have to do restitution, right? If I don't never sleep with my neighbor's wife, I don't need to know what the penalty for adultery is because I don't even need that as a law for me because I'm not doing anything to offend it because I'm loving my brother as I love myself, right? See, that's the thing where sometimes people go wrong with the law. They think about 613, but they don't realize that many of those are talking about if you break one commandment. It's just like, for example, today, right? If I drop my watch outside and Sally, you leaving and you see my watch outside, right? And you see it and you're like, that's a nice watch. And you start thinking, I think I want to keep this watch. And you already know that was my watch, right? Well, guess what? The moment if Sally does that, all those laws of restitution now come into place, right? But if she simply says, well, I'm going to love my brother the same way I'd want him to love me. So you know what? If he found my watch, I'd want him to return it to me, right? So I'm going to return his watch. Do you know that the law actually gives an illustration on what you do. If you find your neighbor's oxen in a ditch, even tells you down to the T to say that if you don't see him that day, keep it until you see him again, till you find him. And you're supposed to diligently look for him too. We're not the half-hearted thing we do today, right? Where we find something like that, right? We be like, yeah, I'm just gonna keep it for a while. Yeah, I'm gonna just, I'm gonna see, hey, if, we don't make any inquiry, right, to try to make sure we get it back to somebody, right? We're just like, yeah, I'm gonna see. Yeah, let me see. A couple of days go by. Well, you know what? Man, ain't nobody said nothing. So, it's looking like it's going to be mine. We don't even ask the question to say, hey, did you lose a watch? Or did you lose this? Did anybody lose this? Right? We don't even make that inquiry, right? We just say, yeah. It's been a week. I'm going to give it one more day. And we can't wait for that one more day to end. Boy, we can't wait because we want this thing so bad, right? It ends and we like, oh, thank you, Lord. Thank you. I appreciate it, right? We start thanking the Most High for it, right? And we didn't even inquire to see who might have lost it or anything. We just start thanking him and say, oh, that's a blessing, right? But that's not what the law says, though, right? Because if it was us, and I know we took a slight detour, but y'all know we got to talk about this because that's a little leaven. Don't y'all see that? That's a little leaven, right? And he said a little leaven spoiled the whole lump. Y'all know we got to give practical examples, right? Because we got to break it down to practical, everyday life, right? That's the only way we can see it, right? So right there, we had a little leaven. And if we don't be careful, that little leaven can go and spoil the whole lump, right? Because what we should have did is what the law said, right? Diligently inquire and say, hey, did someone lose this? Is this somebody's? I found it at this place, and I don't know whose it is, right? And y'all know sometimes we say, well, I don't have any contact information. If you got there, you got some contact information. There's somebody you can reach out to, right? And don't get me wrong, there will be times that after you make diligence to seek whose it may be, then nobody will step up and say it was theirs, That will happen. But at least in that case, you did your due diligence to do all that you were supposed to do. To make sure that you actually do, like the scriptures say, to try to actually return it, right? So that's the point, we're trying to tie all this together here, right? But we got to be circumcised, right? Because if we're not circumcised, it's not going to matter about doing Passover, because if we're not circumcised, we're not going to be invited to Passover to begin with, right? So we're not even invited. Forget about the leaven, because we're full of leaven at that, because we're so full of leaven at that point, we can't even come, right? But someone may say, brother, you're not rightly dividing the word of truth, because, brother, hey, you still today have to have a physical circumcision and all this. And guess what? You know what? That's not even something we have to debate with somebody. You know what? Because the thing about it is that, I would probably be able to say probably all males in this room are circumcised, all right? Maybe not. But the thing is, if you're not, it's not even our business. What's more important is this heart condition. That's what's more important. And I'll tell you, like, for example, not trying to give TMI, but I wasn't circumcised until I was 12 years old. Just saying, and y'all know my mom's background. My mom should have known better, right? But for some reason, all her children, I was the only one that wasn't done to until I was 12.
You were supposed to be done on the 8th day.
Right. 8th day, but it was 12 or 11, 11 years and 300, I know, we going to get out, yeah. But all that time later. But it is a hard issue that we have to look at. So let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 10. And we're going to read verses 16 through 19. That's Deuteronomy chapter 10, verses 16 through 19. And it says, 16, circumcise therefore the foreskin of your heart, and be no more stiff-necked. Wait a minute. I thought the law only was talking about being circumcised in the flesh. That's what I thought. Oh, wait, whoa, is this Moses talking about being circumcised in your heart? And by the way, ladies, because I know sometimes ladies, just like us, will try to get by on a technicality. Yeah, he's talking about you got to be circumcised too. Oh, well, but brother, that doesn't make sense, brother. And we're going this way for a reason, right? The Most High's leading me this way. I guess somebody from Hebrew roots going to be listening to this, I guess, on YouTube or something, right? But because, they always place the emphasis on the men, right, being circumcised. But he says, circumcised therefore the foreskin of your hearts. That applies to ladies too. Because the lady has to be circumcised here in order to be also invited to the Passover. And also to, be working on getting the leaven out of her life too. Moses says, circumcise therefore the foreskin of your heart and be no more stiff-necked. Well, brother, no, that still only applies to men. Well, why are those curses talked about in Isaiah about some of our sisters' hair? Why are those curses there? Oh, wait a minute. But if the curses only apply to the brothers, then the women should be fine, right? Is that the case though in our neighborhoods? No, it's not. Aren't the women serving out the curses too? Isn't this one of the reasons why there's so many single parent homes where just the mother is raising the child? And do you ever notice that in a lot of those households, it seems like the mother had mostly boys for some reason? That's the thing I notice. It's like most of the time they have mostly boys. That's always amazing to me, right? Single parents. The women are serving out the curses too, just like the men. It's not just the men. So Moses, when he says, circumcise therefore the foreskin of your heart, he was talking about the whole nation of people. That includes man, woman, and child. Everybody. Verse 17 of Deuteronomy 10. For the Most High your God is God of gods and Lord of lords, a great God, a mighty and terrible, which regardeth not persons, nor taketh reward. So, he doesn't regard persons. We know that he chose Israel. We know that they were the ones that were supposed to be the examples to the Gentiles. And believe it or not, they're still being examples to the Gentiles, because Paul even said that through their fall, salvation came to the Gentiles. So we're still being an example. Even if it's just to say, you see what that Israelite did? Don't you do that, Gentile. Because you see what happened to that Israelite, don't you? I'm telling you, this is what's going to be heard by somebody in Hebrew roots. I'm telling you, this is not even the plan. It wasn't even the plan. But, so it applies to everybody. He doesn't regard any persons, nor does he take a reward. Verse 18, he doth execute the judgment of the fatherless and widow, and loveth the stranger, in giving him food and raiment. So, the stranger has to have a circumcised heart. The stranger has to be invited by the Most High to the Passover as well. The stranger has to get the leaven out of his life. The Most High is not leaving anybody exempt, right? So that if we were somewhere and there was a Gentile among us that said, oh, well, you know what? That doesn't apply to me. That's just Israel. No. Applies to everybody. Everybody's got to actually do this. Verse 19, love ye therefore the stranger, for ye were strangers in the land of Egypt. It's so funny that he tells us to love the stranger and then say, because we were strangers in Egypt. But yet we have all these teachings today. Y'all know that some people even teach that Gentiles can't keep Passover? Did y'all know that? That's actually some teachers out there that say that. Clearly, that's some leaven of the Pharisees, isn't it? Because he clearly said here, circumcise the foreskin of your heart. And he said that if the heart, your heart, is not circumcised, that a Israelite nor a stranger or a Gentile can take part. Period. So he was clear there. So when looking at the heart of the matter, we see in the letter of the law, we had to be physically circumcised in order to be invited to the Passover, take part in the Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. If we were not circumcised in our heart, we were breaking the covenant. And we need to make sure that all of us or circumcising our hearts so that we don't break the covenant. The physical circumcision that started with that was talked about with Abraham, that was only a token to show already that he had already been circumcised in his heart. Because you notice, and it talks about in Galatians 6, I believe, that Abraham received the promises before he was circumcised. That's in the Bible. You can look that up. I'm paraphrasing it. So clearly then, if it was about physical circumcision, Abraham wouldn't have received the promise before physical circumcision. So, again, when at this season of Passover, we have to make sure we take it serious, and we have to make sure we're circumcising our hearts before we even dare to take part in it, because the Most High went so far as to say that if you take part in it uncircumcised, without the right heart, without the right spirit, that you're going to be breaking the covenant. So we would have already broken the covenant before we even got started. And then if we are circumcised in heart, he still tells us you need to make sure you get the leaven out of your life. Any sins that beset us or that weigh us down, he said we need to be shedding these things, right? Because we're supposed to be covered with the blood. And the blood can't cover us if we're covered with leaven. He told Moses, put the evil from among you. And this is something that we have to, this is something that a lot of times in the Christian church that is not talked about, putting the evil away from among us. But we still have to do that even today. We say we're the Israel of God, but we got to make sure we're putting the evil away from among us, starting with ourselves, self-examination. We notice that the same thing applied to the stranger. So we have to make sure that we're taking an examination, doing these things. We're going to go to Hebrews chapter 9, and we're almost done. It's the book of Hebrews, chapter 9. We're going to read verses 19 through 28. We're going to read it because we're going to show here the blood was always used. Passover lamb, blood on the doorpost, door sides. Verse 19, for when Moses had spoken every precept to all the people according to the law, he took the blood of cows and of goats with water and scarlet wool and hyssop, and sprinkled both the book and all the people. So he actually sprinkled blood on the people. Now notice this is after he had all the law written, all the law spoken to the people. He still took it and put it on the book and the people again. This was after they had already came out of Egypt. Verse 20, saying, this is the blood of the testament which God hath enjoined unto you. Moreover, he sprinkled with blood both the tabernacle. Oh, that's right, but you are the tabernacle today, and you're supposed to have blood sprinkled on you, right? And all the vessels of the ministry, meaning all the things inside the tabernacle. Meaning, wouldn't we just read the scriptures in 1 Corinthians that said that you and everything in you, your spirit, everything about you belongs to him, that you don't even belong to yourself anymore? Mm-hmm. Everything about you, about us, is supposed to be covered with the blood. Verse 22, and almost all things are by the law purged with blood, and without shedding of blood is no remission. Blood has to be used in everything. It was therefore necessary that the pattern of things in the heavens should be purified with these, but the heavenly things themselves with better sacrifices than these. Because we had an actual regular lamb in the Old Testament, right? But we had to have even something that was greater after something that was heavenly. And there's nothing else greater besides the Most High. There's nothing else greater than the Messiah, right? I mean, like Anthony, we talked about that day, like he said in Isaiah, besides him, there is no Savior. But it was the willful act of the Messiah that caused us to be able to receive this salvation. And Passover is one of those holy days we should really reflect on what sacrifice has been given for us, and reflect on just how precious and how valuable this sacrifice really is. See, if we reflect on how precious and how valuable it is, we won't come with uncircumcised hearts. We won't. We'll come ready, because we realize, wow, this thing is far beyond anything I ever know. I know who I was before. And for him to say that he will save me in spite of all my imperfections and my issues, even the imperfections and the issues I have now, that is something. See, these things have to be personable to us. Verse 24, for the Messiah is not entered into the holy places made with hands, which are figures of the truth. And we talk about the law being a schoolmaster to bring us to the one himself, the Messiah. But into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of God for us. Nor yet that he should offer himself often as the high priest entereth into the holy place every year with blood of others. For then must he often have suffered since the foundation of the world. But now once in the end of the world hath he appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. And as it is appointed unto men once to die, but after this to judgment, so Christ was offered once to bear the sins of many. And unto them that look for him shall he appear the second time without sin unto salvation. Skip on to chapter 11, the book of Hebrews. I'm going to read 24 through 29. It's Hebrews 11, 24 through 29. Verse 24, by faith Moses, when he was come to years, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer an affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season, esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt, for he had respect unto the recompense of the reward. That's the thing, we have to have respect unto the recompense. We have to have respect for what's being done for us. We really, really gotta take this thing for Passover really serious. You know, it's nothing to play with. When the Most High says that if you don't even have the right heart, don't even bother coming. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, of course, but we might as well not even show up if we don't have the right heart. Because he says if you show up and you don't have the right heart and you take part in it, you're broken the covenant. Verse 27, by faith he forsook Egypt, talking about Moses, not fearing the wrath of the king, for he endured as seeing him who is invisible. Through faith he kept the Passover, and the sprinkling of blood, lest he that destroyed the firstborn should touch them. It says he kept the Passover by faith. Do we not think that when the Most High told Moses, tell them, put the blood on the doorpost, and when I come through, as long as I see that, I won't touch the firstborn. If the Most High said that to any one of us, I guarantee you we would still be afraid that night, right? If he came right now and said, put this blood on your doorpost, I'm going to come through tonight, and wherever I don't see it, I'm killing the firstborn. We will be afraid today, I'm telling you. But that shows some place of where we're at, though, if we're afraid. Because that shows that we don't really believe we're in a place of right standing. See, if you can say that you will be afraid right now, that shows that you're not fully sure if you're in a place of right standing. That's why examination has to come in for ourselves. Because we shouldn't be afraid. We shouldn't be. Verse 29, by faith they passed through the Red Sea as by dry land, which the Egyptians are saying to do were drowned. So again, faith here was also intermingled with keeping the Passover. You got to have faith if you're going to be circumcised in the heart and then come and actually keep it as well, because otherwise you're broken it. Let's go to Hebrews chapter 12. We're also going to read 24 through 29 there. This is Hebrews 12. 24 through 29. And to Messiah, the mediator of the new covenant, and to the blood of the sprinkling, that speaketh better things than that of Abel, seeing that ye refuse not him that speaketh. For if they escape not who refused him that spake on earth, much more shall not we escape if we turn away from him that speaketh from heaven. So, Passover, it was about being circumcised of the heart, making sure we're in the right heart condition to come to the Most High, right? Receiving his perfect sacrifice. Making sure we're removing the leaven out of our lives. And he says that we got to make sure that we, when we come to the Passover, that we don't refuse the one that we're supposed to be receiving. Verse 26, whose voice then shook the earth, but now he hath promised, saying, yet once more I shake not the earth only, but also heaven. And this word, yet once more, signifieth the removing of those things that are shaken, as of things that are made, that which things which cannot be shaken may remain. Wherefore we, receiving a kingdom which cannot be moved, let us have grace whereby we may serve the Most High acceptably with reverence and godly fear. For our God, our power, is a consuming fire. So let's read Exodus 12. I want to read 48 and 49 again. And when the stranger shall sojourn with thee, and keep the Passover to the Lord, let all the males be circumcised, and let him come near and keep it. And he shall be as one that is born in the land, for no uncircumcised person shall eat thereof. One law, that is for him that is homeborn, and unto the stranger that sojourneth among you. Again, we can't be uncircumcised taking part in this. Verse 50. Thus did all the children of Israel, as the Most High commanded Moses and Aaron, so did they. And it came to pass the selfsame day that the Most High did bring the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt by their armies. See, sure that we have some things going on in our lives today that are, like bondage or whatnot, and we have to look to the author and the finisher of our faith. But the author and the finisher of our faith expects us to come a certain way to him. He expects us to come with a circumcised heart. He expects us to be ready to receive him. He expects us to be actively working on getting the leaven out of our lives. And we've seen that in the Bible, that leaven, it's not talking about bread anymore. It's talking about sin. And we started off prefacing talking about sin because sin is the one topic that's talked about throughout the whole Bible, if we notice. It's always sin. And so, even though we don't like to talk about those things, we have to realize that the Most High is really serious about sin because, again, as I've said before, it's the one thing that can keep us out of the kingdom. So we'll wrap up with 1 Peter 2. It's the book of 1 Peter, chapter 2. I'm going to read verses 1 through 5. Wherefore, laying aside all malice and all guile and hypocrisies and envies and all evil speakings, as newborn babes desire the sincere milk of the word, that ye may grow thereby. If so be ye have tasted that the Lord is gracious, to whom coming as unto a living stone, disallowed indeed of men, but chosen of God and precious, ye also, as lively stones, are built up a spiritual house, a holy priesthood, to offer up spiritual sacrifices accepted to the Most High by the Messiah. The Passover foreshadowed the Messiah. And what was done in the Old Testament foreshadowed the redemptive work that he was to come to do for us. Let us remember these things going forward. With any Passover we decide to take part in, let's make sure we're circumcised in our hearts first. Let's make sure that we can come in the right spirit. Let's make sure that we're actively working on getting rid of any leaven that may be in our lives. Because Christ himself, the Messiah, is our Passover.